see the unknown creatures of every feature, somewhere in the wake of a new dawn. Do you hear its call? It's your return. Now gather around, my little listeners, for there are stories to be told. Stories of love, tragedy, life, and death. Wander where you ponder. You will see a man with a lantern, standing on a boat. Toss him a coin, and your quest will unfold.
In the halls of the Elven King. The great King Damien entered the chamber, trampling the petals of roses welcoming him. A long feathered cape flowed behind him, dragging against the floor and catching some of the rose petals along the trail, adding to its beauty. A tall horned helmet with branch-like antlers protruding from it, and golden armor that were mounted on his shoulders and chest shimmered in the sunlight. However, he wore no shoes. His feet were completely bare. When he sat down on his throne, the armor clanged like bells with his weight. He looked upon the lion suitors and sniffed. The smallest one of the bunch twitched. He could feel his eyes peeling at his skin. While the smallest one shivered, the other suitors whispered amongst themselves and occasionally pointed and snickered at him. He straightened himself up and regained his posture.
You,
King Damien spoke, steely in baritone. He pointed to the first out of the four suitors.
Why are you laughing? Does my presence stir a comedic drive to you?
The lone suitor just chuckled. You look like a woman. The king grinned softly, batting his eyelashes dramatically and crossing his legs. Come closer, he beckoned him in a lighter voice, crooking his finger. With a confused expression, the lone suitor came closer and like a giant spider awaiting its prey in a web. Damien slammed his heel into his chest, leaving a foot-shaped dent in his armor. The loud bang made the smallest suitor catch his breath in his lungs. The force caused the suitor to fall back and gasp for air, blood pouring out of his mouth.
Now that we've established what mockery will bring,
Damien announced,
you will acquire vigor, poise, and humility. May you not present these things, you will be punished accordingly. Understood?
My king, if I may ask, murmured the youngest one, silent as a mouse. What are we to gain from our lessons? Damien turned to him with a gentle smile, making him freeze. As he walked closer, he froze. But he placed a warm hand on his cheek, warmly gazing at him. What is your name, boy? He asked. My name is Amalthea, said the youngest suitor. He kept his eyes to the ground, scared to make the slightest of movement, but Damien tilted his chin up, and he smiled at him once more. You will become strong soldiers and protect the people of this land, for they cannot defend themselves. When I die, you will be all that's left of my legacy. Amalthean swallowed and stood up straight. Then I will do everything it takes to bring honor to this kingdom and the people in it and their king. God's Creatures, a Draft. Chapter 1. Percy. Lightning, thunder. That's the first thing I remember. A man in an eggshell white lab coat stood above me. His eyes were trained on me. I looked down at my legs, which were covered by a white sheet. Groggily, I rose from the stretcher I was laying on and got a look at my hands. Long, pasty, and bony they were, with black, dirty fingernails. My long, wispy hair that ran down my back had a weight to it, making it hard to move my head. Turning to the man again, he chanted, "You're alive. You're actually alive." His volume startled me and I jolted away, falling off the table and onto the floor. I moved my hair from my face, meeting his eyes. As he moved closer to me, his face began to fall. No, this isn't right. Your eyes, they're wrong. A walking cadaver. Disgusting. Wispy hair that ran. How nice. 1 minute I've been alive, and the first thing he did was criticize my eyes. I moaned and I reached out to him, as if he could... How nice. 1 moment I've been alive, and the first thing he did was criticize my eyes. I moaned and reached out to him, as if he could clear my discombobulation. I clutched his coat, but he gasped and jerked away, snatching a crowbar from the fireplace. He brandished it, backing me into a shelf of books I accidentally knocked over, scattering papers everywhere. The man bolted out the door, shoving me out of the way and leaving me curled in a ball on the floor. "You're a mistake! An abomination!" he shouted. I laid there shivering and crying for a while until I mustered up the courage to put on a coat and hobble down the stairs, out the door, and into the streets. The streets were dark and misty, with cobbled gray roads, puddles, and abandoned carriages. The place felt miserable. Still, I wobbled along. Then, as if things couldn't get any worse, a mob of people with pitchforks and torches clambered in my direction. Then, in typical angry mob fashion, they threw rocks at me and lit a brick on fire, chucking it and clobbering me in the face. I cried out, holding my face, and broke into a sprint, making a break to the bridge. They were catching up to me, but I managed to hurl myself off the bridge and into the water below, where the current swallowed me whole. Surprisingly, I survived. When I woke up again, a figure stood above me, and I whimpered, pulling myself into a tight ball, preparing for the possible abuse coming my way. But instead of a fist or an object making impact with my body, a warm but strong hand touched my head. I looked up, covering my face with my hair so that my eyes weren't visible. Peeking through the dark forest of hair, I saw a man with a golden metallic mask on his face. He wore a long royal crimson coat with black accents, gold buttons, and pants that matched. He smiled and looked at me with tender eyes. "Easy now, my big friend. You're safe now. I pulled you from the river and brought you here. Don't mind the smell. Are you all right?" This was before I knew how to speak properly, so I just responded with a croaking groan, sounding like a constipated toad. He cocked a brow. "Oh, pardon me. Are you perhaps mute? Or deaf?" "Monster," I croaked. "Monster?" I pushed my hair out of my face, revealing my eyes. I expected him to run away or scowl at me, but he just gave me a confused look. "What are you on about? There was no monster." That's when I sat down and started bawling my eyes out. And I just cried and cried and cried. And he held me close, rocking me back and forth, as if he were a mother with an injured child. And with that, he began to hum in my ear. Chapter 2. Eric. November the 7th, 1908. I encountered a strange, tall creature tonight. After leaving Paris to start a new life, I had been traveling around Europe, seeking more purpose. I came to England to rest a while, and after one night of being here, I watched a mob of angry peasants chase a wretch off a bridge. Though I could have continued drinking my tonic and minding my own business, there was something about that wretch that struck a chord within me, something far too familiar to ignore. I pulled on my coat and rushed out the door. Avoiding the attention of the crowd, I ran under the bridge, looking down below. I could see bubbles coming to the surface. I laid my coat and boots down the shore and waded into the water. Diving under the water, I searched for the creature. He was so tall it was impossible to miss him. Finally, I saw a long mane of hair and an arm. I snatched it and pulled him close. I dragged the soaked bag of hope to the shore and flipped him on his back. His eyes were rolled back and he was shivering. I continued dragging him until we were in the dark of the forest. Wrapping him in my coat, I got a good look at him. He looked like a corpse with a once beautiful face. He shivered and whimpered softly, melting my heart to lemon drops. I moved closer to him and rubbed his back to warm him up. He clutched my arm like a lost child seeking comfort from their mother. Being 32, I never had any children, let alone much experience with them. But I did know that children are supposed to feel safe and loved. Something my own parents weren't able to give me. I wrapped my arms around him and rocked him softly. Softly humming a hymn I learned when I stayed in the opera house. The creature seemed to be soothed by this. As his crying soon ceased, his breathing became more steady. I couldn't help but see myself in the poet wrench. He and I were the same. At least, it felt that way. After what seemed like hours, I led him back to my hotel room, which luckily came with 2 beds. Upon entering, he hit his head against the wall. Instead of dwelling in a moment of pain, he just brushed it off. As he explored my belongings, scanning books and looking at the lantern, he stared at it, seeming enchanted by the dancing yellow glow inside it. What I didn't expect, however, was him to stick his hand inside of it and try to snatch the fire from inside. He howled and dropped it to the floor, shattering it. I ran towards him, sitting him down on the bed. "Shh, steady now," I crooned, wrapping his hand in a cloth. "Fire is dangerous. You must learn to respect it." The creature nodded. Childlike he was, but at least he could understand me, I hoped. "Here, hold this in place. We'll eat, and then I'll draw you a bath. Not to be rude, but you don't smell too pleasant." After eating some turkey soup and bread, I led him to the bathroom. "Undress yourself. We don't bathe with our clothes on. I won't look." The creature looked at me confused. I sighed. Okay, scratch that. Just childlike. Intelligence is still in the works, I thought for a moment. Is it creepy for someone with the body of an adult, but has the mind of a child, is to be dressed by a grown man? I didn't want to jump to the conclusion and label him as a mentally challenged person, but I just watched him stick his hand into a lantern for Christ's sakes. So I undressed him, and no, he wasn't wearing underwear. When the water ran, the sound caused the creature to spook a little. "It's all right, don't be afraid," I assured him. "Look." I ran my hand on the top of the water, leaving large ripples. I smiled at him as he gained more confidence with contact again. Eventually, I was able to coax him into stepping in, though I was wearing my pants. He towered over me. Myself being 6'2", he had to be at least 8 feet. The creature didn't seem to mind though, seeing how relaxed he was when I poured warm water over his head. "Close your eyes," I whispered gently as I scrubbed his long black hair. He seemed to be nodding off as I brushed his hair and gave him a robe, which was kind of small on him. Clothes would be a thing we would worry about come morning. In the meantime, I readied him for bed and continued writing at my desk. I looked at him one more time before making myself comfortable in my own bed and blowing out the candle.
There is darkness, cold, dark and hollow. Aurelia found herself paralyzed in the legs and unable to move as she fell in and out of consciousness. What gave me the bright idea to jump into a freaking lake and not think to grab a rope? I mean, had I not, the red-haired girl would be dead. But of course, the ice broke under my weight, too, and I was fated to meet her demise instead. Helpless, she watched as the light began to fade. Suddenly, however, a guy with a long, hooked staff plunged in the water after her. He linked her arm with the hook and swam up, pulling her along. When they burst to the surface, the air stung Aurelia's skin. She threw up and choked out a lungful of water, causing snot to come out of her nose. The young man rested a hand on her shoulder. "Easy there. You'll be okay." He had shaggy white hair and a long blue coat with silver engraved patterns on the collar. He set her down on a blanket that was spread in the stove. A woman, who also had white hair, although it was more platinum, approached him and put a hand on his back. "Give her space. I can keep her from catching hypothermia." "A magic user? I'm saved." But before Aurelia could celebrate, she gave in to the pain and passed out. Meanwhile, in the mountains, a dragon demi-human with large bluish-purple wings and small horns scaled the perimeter and landed on a boulder. Curling her toes, she buried her sharp toenails into the ice and took off again. Nala was beyond frustrated. Where is she? And why did she take off like that? Helping strangers isn't our business. She landed in front of a cave and tucked her wings in. Nala and Aurelia have known one another since they were children. They were practically sisters. God damn it, Aurelia. I hate it when you do this to me. They were enjoying their vacation in Norway after agreeing to leave their life of demon hunting behind, when all of a sudden when hiking, Aurelia heard a scream from far away. Nala insisted that they headed back to the cabin, but no. Aurelia took off, saying that she'd be back in 10 minutes. If only she were telling the truth, because 10 minutes has become 5 hours. And Nala was getting pissed. However, instead of burning down and kicking the crap out of the trees like she would when she was 14, she ripped some branches out of the pines nearby and gathered them into a pile. She wasn't a fire dragon, so she had to do things a little more manually. She gritted her teeth. "Light up, you bitch!" After what seemed like hours, Nala cracked the stick over her knee, threw a rock, and somehow she managed to light a fire. Nala slumped to the ground in disbelief. Ha! After setting up camp, she curled into her sleeping bag and watched the flames as they danced. Wherever you are, Aurelia, you better be safe, or I'll kill you. Nala drifted off to sleep as an ominous figure watched her from the distance. In the shadows, it lurked. Aurelia awakened in a warm bed, with furs and thick blankets. She felt a little sad for the wolves that had to die. Pulling one of the pelts close, she hugged it and felt a lot safer, remembering her dog back at home. Her days ended when the young man from earlier came back into the room. "Thank God you're alive. We thought you were a goner." "He thought you were a goner. Sorry about my brother. He's a bit of a blockhead. And my sister has an icicle up her." Karma blasted him with a pile of snow and sent him flying across the room. Aurelia stared in awe. She noticed and smiled back at her. "Oh, I'm sorry. It probably would have been helpful if I gave you a warning. I'm magic-born." "Oh, no, it's cool. No pun intended. I'm magic-born too."
Is the red-haired girl okay? They don't really like to be referred to as a boy or a girl, but they're okay. Sorry. What's their name? Why not ask them? Nama nudged her foot against something against the floor that was met with an ow. What? Introduce yourself. I'm Manifred, or, Manny. Nice to meet you, Manny. I'm Aurelia. I'm glad you're alright. Oh, you too. Well, since we're on the topic of introduction, my name's Kama, and that's my brother, Naveen. Somehow, he's the older one. Naveen circles back and sits on the bed. Aurelia, is it? Do you have anywhere you call home? As soon as you're well enough, we'll take you back home. Aurelia lets out a sigh of relief. Me and my friend are just vacationing here. She's most likely looking for me, but I think I'll be able to let her know where I am. She stumbles over to the window and sends a beam into the sky, using her abilities. A beacon of light shines from her palm and shoots up into the air. But the act caused her to muster so much strength that she started to teeter back and forth. Naveen caught her and helped her back into the bed, covering her up. Don't push yourself. You still need rest. What I need is some more food. Would you happen to have anything to eat? Sure. You like mountain goat? I don't really eat meat. We have raw chard. I'll take it. Naveen, Kama, and Manny leave her to rest, and Aurelia drifts back to sleep, hugging the wolf pelt close. Hello, this is Ireland Hook.